This is Distant Replay, the podcast that goes back in time to relive all the greatest events that we witnessed in sports. From upsets, to championships, to cultural moments, we discuss it all. Coming up on today's episode.
As the shot is launched, there will be no undefeated champion of Wisconsin with an unbelievable stretch drive to the championship game.
Going back to April 4th, 2015, it is the Final Four, Lucas Oil Stadium, huge dome. The setting, though, is basketball, and it's Kentucky and Wisconsin. One of the classic Final Four games, one of the best college basketball games we've seen in a while. Collection of talent on this court was remarkable, and this is one that everybody still remembers. I mean, this game's only 6 years old, but this Kentucky team, who was undefeated going into the Final Four, maybe Cal's best team ever, but we don't know. We'll discuss that. There's plenty to talk about with this matchup, but Wisconsin pulls the upset, and we're going to go through this game again one more time. Welcome into Distant Replay. I'm Ben George. He's Mike Noto. And Mike, I know this one is one that you automatically remember. When I mentioned 2015, this could be a good game to line up with the Final Four that's coming up this weekend. I think you knew exactly what happened in this game.
Yeah, this is just a classic from every metric you want to use. Coaches, venue, talent all over the court. You had a lot of a revenge factor with these two teams coming into the Final Four. So just storylines everywhere and an absolute classic.
You know, I remember this one quite a bit because I was out in Vegas for this Final Four, and
that's awesome.
I was in a survivor pool, right? So you pick a team, they have to win for you to advance, but you can't use them again. So in the tournament, it's great because you have to make sure your bracket lines up so that you can get all the way to the end. You can't use a one seed in the first round because then if they make the Final Four, you're going to run out of picks. Anyway, we had a great Final Four. We had Michigan State and we had Kentucky left going into the Final Four. So let's go out to Vegas. We're gonna hedge some bets. We're gonna try to go out there so that if we get to the championship game and there's some money on the line, let's hedge our bets. Well, Michigan State gets out to a 14-2 lead on Duke or something, and we're sitting there in one of the casinos, sports books, like on the patio, the sun's shining. It's March in Vegas, so it's not super hot. We're enjoying some drinks, feeling pretty good about Michigan State jumping out on Duke, and then boom, Duke wins by 20. So we're in a pissed off mood, getting ready for this game. Like already lost some money, in a bad headspace when this game happened. So I've got bad juju memories about this game. But I'm glad to go back and kind of clear the slate and watch this game with a clear head.
Dude, the Vegas bad headspace is the worst because you're in that bad headspace and literally every vice is at your fingertips.
Yeah, and then you're trying to double down to catch back up and stuff. So it can be a bad place to be, but it can also be a great place to be. But let's talk about this game, and we got to start off with this game with Kentucky because I think it's going to be our main kind of focus in this conversation is Kentucky. First off, their roster. You look at this team, they had 9 players that play in the NBA on this team, okay? And I don't even know who you start with, but I think going back to this Kentucky team, the thing that you always think about is, okay, 2015, who was on this team? Because the roster's turning over so much. But this team the front court was so good.
The front court was absolutely stacked. And wait till we remind you who was in the backcourt. But you had a starting front court of Karl Anthony Towns, Willie, Cauley, Stein, and Trey, Lyles. Okay, so you look at that as a college front line. I mean, Trey Lyles, the number 12 prospect in 2014, and Karl Anthony Towns, the number 5 prospect. I'd like to see who was,
right,
who was ahead of him there. And then Cauley Stein still in the top 40. So you had those guys just on the front line.
Stupid. I mean, and you look at the backcourt, the Harrison twins, and I'd kind of forgotten about. I know Kentucky fans probably remember them fairly fondly, but the Harrison twins were sophomores, were the starters, and behind them on the bench, behind the Harrison twins bench, Devin Booker and Tyler Ulis.
The fact that Devin Booker was a bench player on this team, I knew, but I had kind of forgotten about. And I think it was one of those things in the moment where we'll get into how this Kentucky team played players in waves. So they played a lot of guys throughout the course of a game, more than a typical college team. And I think even in the moment, you kind of had in the back of your mind, man, Ulis and Booker are the backup backcourt, And are they the best backcourt in the country? Maybe. I mean, you could just see those two had crazy talent right from day one.
I was like frustrated how little Booker was being used in this game, like especially in like the first half. Like it was kind of like why are the Harrison twins in there so much? Like you got and now obviously hindsight's it's much easier to kind of make these calls, but you're going back and going, man, how is this guy not playing? He didn't start. Devin Booker didn't start a single game that year, Mike. Not one game.
Even back then, Devin Booker was one of those guys. When he took a jump shot, he took your breath away.
Yeah,
like his jump shot was perfect, and you could see the athleticism as well. So I don't think this is hindsight with him. I think he was third on the team in scoring, and I could guarantee you he wasn't close to third in minutes.
No, he was 21 minutes a game.
Yeah, 10 points in 21 minutes a game. 10 points a game in 21 minutes a game with all this other talent around him.
Yep. And he wasn't super utilized, but look at where this team was too. Like this is Calipari's 6th year at Kentucky. He'd already gone to the Elite Eight his first year, then Final Four, then won the championship, then NIT, and then another runner-up finish the year before, and then the Final Four. So he'd gone to Final Fours in 4 or 5 years at this point. And then you also got to think back, the other kind of storyline in this game is these two teams played in the Final Four the year before.
Another classic game. And if you remember that game, you'll remember Aaron Harrison's shot to win it. You had the Harrison twins as holdovers from the year before. You had Dakari Johnson as a holdover from the year before, and Marcus Lee. Alex Poitras missed this game. He's out this year with an injury, if you remember. So we have those holdovers from this team, and we'll get into the Wisconsin roster, who was littered with guys who had bad taste in their mouth from that 2014 matchup.
That's the crazy part is you mentioned Dakari Johnson, who was a leading rebounder the year before against Wisconsin. He's barely even playing. And then also Marcus Lee, who kind of he was that guy that had some huge moments when he played. Like he was the guy everybody looked at and said, okay, this guy could be a lottery pick. Like, why is he not playing more? I think he might have played volleyball growing up, so he had a tremendous athletic ability, could jump through the gym, and he had some moments. And these guys are just buried at the very bottom of the bench here. So you still had some experience that is not even playing right now. So just to kind of give you the feel of this lineup top to bottom, I mean, it's stupid, stacked. Again, 9 players off this roster went to the NBA at some point, got some time in the NBA, maybe not long careers for some of them, but at least got to that next level. 9 play. I mean, you don't even want a roster, Mike. Most of the time you want an 8-man rotation, right? And they had 9 guys that are playing in the NBA.
And they played them in absolute waves. And they played all of them, and Dakari Johnson, huge recruit, by the way. Yeah. He's a top 10 recruit. He started his high school career at St. Patrick's in Elizabeth. If you know that high school, you probably know it. There was a whole documentary on St. Patrick's Elizabeth, and that's where Kyrie Irving went to.
There you go, the breakdown.
And Al Harrington. Remember Al Harrington?
Oh, yeah. Al Harrington. Yeah. How about Wisconsin? So Wisconsin, as you mentioned, had that bad taste in their mouth from the year prior, led by Bo Ryan. This would be Bo Ryan's final full season in Wisconsin, and he closes it out with a big finish here. But Frank Kaminsky, everybody remember Frank Kaminsky. Then you got Sam Dekker. I think those two are the guys that stand out the most. Then Nigel Hayes, who was he had an incredible tournament this year. Those were kind of the headliners of this team. But, they had some good guard play as well. Just like a solid roster with a couple guys that were kind of just playing, which were locked in throughout this tournament.
When you think of a classic March Madness team that's veteran-laden, battle-tested, ready to get to the next step as a program, like you're dealing with Wisconsin here, right? The coach, great coach, very good. Kaminsky was the player of the year this year in college basketball. Sam Dekker, you could tell he was going to be a pro, one of those guys. And then, like you mentioned, role players like Koenig and Hayes, who had a good tournament. I remember Koenig hit a big shot at some point here for Wisconsin. I honestly can't remember if it was this tourney run or the year before.
I think it might have been this. But yeah, he was one of those guys that he kind of made a play when he had to. It seemed like he was just kind of like an ace in the hole for him. Like if they needed something, he would step in there. But the big headliners were Kaminsky, Dekker, and Hayes, and they all played locked in. And Dekker was really good in this tournament too. I mean, Kaminsky was was just solid all year, right? I mean, no surprise there. But Dekker just kind of elevated it, and I remember Dekker most because I think this game. I mean, I think this is the game that really kind of cemented his legacy.
Yeah, it was, and this was for Kaminsky and Dekker. This tourney run was very big for their draft prospects.
Yeah,
because Kaminsky ended up being a lottery pick, and Dekker ended up getting picked in the top 20.
Kaminsky averaged 19 points, 8 rebounds that year. Dekker 14 points and 6 rebounds. So these two guys were kind of the headliners. And I mentioned Hayes. Hayes was third in scoring on that team with 12.5 points, 6 rebounds a game. But he was kind of in the background for the most part. But he had some huge moments in this tournament throughout. But Bo Ryan, I mean, you look at Bo Ryan's career, and I kind of forgot, but I kind of just glossed over how good he was at Wisconsin. He never missed the NCAA tournament, which is amazing because just flip back over to Kentucky. This is Calipari's 6th year, and he's already had a season where he went to the NIT with that collection of talent.
Yeah, you have Bo Ryan was like the model of consistency I thought of as a college coach. What I mean by that is you knew his teams were going to play a certain way. You knew they were always going to be between 20 and 25 wins a season, and you knew they weren't going to turn the ball over. They were going to play efficiently, and just consistency is what I think of when I think of Bo Ryan and the teams during this era for Wisconsin. And he's great. I mean, he's a great sideline interview. He's one of those guys, very prepared. You could tell a very kind of relaxed coach during the game. Because I think he prepared his team to like the nth degree. And especially with this team, I think he was very comfortable with what they were going to bring to the table in this game.
14 straight years in the tournament for Wisconsin under Bo Ryan, with these final 2 being in the Final Four. So, kind of culminated his career with this run. But let's get into this tournament a little bit itself. The path here, Mike, and Kentucky, again, was the headliner. This Kentucky team was undefeated. And you look at this team and what they were able to accomplish that year. There was a reason why everybody kind of assumed they were going to make it back to the Final Four, obviously, but then to the national championship game, because they kind of just ran through everybody. I mean, you look at their schedule, and I know the SEC was a little bit weaker at that point. I think they played one ranked opponent in the SEC that season, was Arkansas. They won that game by 17. They rolled through the SEC tournament. Here was their SEC tournament run, Mike. They beat Florida 64-49, beat Auburn 91-67 in the semis, then beat Arkansas, again, the only other ranked team, 78-63 in the SEC tournament. So they were just rolling teams from start to finish. They played Kansas that year early on. They won 72-40. Kansas was a 5th-ranked team. This was a Champions Classic. They won by 32. They beat 6th-ranked Texas by 12. They beat 21st-ranked North Carolina by 14. I mean, they rarely played even a close game.
Yeah, and they were an absolute juggernaut. And if you had one of those friends or one of those family members that was a casual college basketball fan, they were hooked in by this Kentucky run. Like when they were on TV during this season, as the wins started to pile up, and how the impressive wins started to pile up, and you knew they were littered with NBA prospects. This was a team that even if you were just like more of an NBA fan, you were watching this Kentucky team. And if you were like a hardened college basketball fan, you knew all about this Wisconsin team, right?
Yeah.
They were the opposite in every perspective. Their coaches were opposites. Their teams were opposites. This is the height of everyone being like the one and done for Calipari isn't fair, right?
Yeah.
Because some of the records he had here was 35-3 his first year, 29-9 his second year, 38-2 his third year. His 5th year, like you mentioned, they lost 11 games and he still made the Final Four. So now there's this thought like, well, if he just even gets them to play good for like 3 weeks, like they're so talented they can make the Final Four, And now they're coming into this Final Four 38-0. So this is where everyone's kind of at their wits' end with Calipari, and I think it's safe to say he's one of the biggest lightning rod figure in college basketball the last 20, 25 years or so.
Yeah, no question. And I was looking at their run through this tournament. The Sweet 16 game against West Virginia, I don't remember this game at all. They won 78-39 over West Virginia in the Sweet 16. 78-39.
Things could get sideways really quick because, like I mentioned, they played 10 guys, right? And if those guys are all clicking at the same time, you literally had no chance.
They did also squeak by Notre Dame, the in the Elite Eight. I think I remember that game was a classic. They won that one by 2 to get into the Final Four. But at the moment, I think that one felt like, okay, they got over this hurdle. That was the one team that was going to challenge them. They've got their close game out of the way, and now they're going to head to the Final Four with a really good shot to win. On the other side, you had this Wisconsin team who won the Big Ten. They won the Big Ten tournament. They were 31-3 coming into the tournament, 30-win season for Bo Ryan. They had a couple of closer games, but nothing super close in the tournament. Every win just about was by 7. North Carolina, Arizona, good Arizona matchup in that Elite Eight as well. And then they face this Kentucky team. So that kind of sets the stage where we are, Mike. What else pregame do we need to know about this?
I think it's worth mentioning. I did not know this. Do you remember Melvin Booker from Missouri back in the mid-'90s?
Not really.
All right, he was the Big 8. I think it was the Big 8 back then. Big 8 player of the year. I never realized he was Devin Booker's father. I never realized that. I guarantee if you go back and look at highlights of Melvin Booker, you'll remember who he is because it's right probably when you started watching college basketball.
Right, probably so.
And that Trayvon Jackson on Wisconsin, remember how they were talking about how he came back from an injury this season and everything?
Yeah.
He's Jimmy Jackson's son. I didn't know that either.
Yeah. It's crazy the guys that we grew up watching in basketball now have kids that are through college or into the NBA already. And Jim Jackson's one of those guys.
Yeah, Jim Jackson, Melvin Booker. I had never realized that.
I think I remember that now because I think they did show him a few times during this tournament. Now that you said that, I think I do remember that.
And he looks like Jim Jackson if you look at him now. Now that you look at him, you'd be like, oh, it looks like Jimmy Jackson.
Yeah.
And this is remember, this Kentucky team is the first undefeated team to make the Final Four since UNLV. So just to put in perspective how rare this run is for Kentucky.
That's true. And I'm trying to think, has it happened since? I mean, we're on the cusp of Gonzaga making it in. It's an undefeated here as we record this, and so they'll kind of join that elite company. But yeah, it's such a rare sight. And you think back to that UNLV team's an all-timer. I don't know if I think about this Kentucky team quite in the same regard as that UNLV team, just because I think it was the sport's different, right? Because you knew those guys, they were around for a while, they had like an amazing career together. This Kentucky team was kind of a one-off, great run, but you kind of forget exactly who was on the roster because they've turned it over so much. But this game, as I mentioned, inside Lucas Oil, so Indianapolis, the Dome, which I hate, Mike. You watch some of the shots here. You had the elevated court, guys sitting below the court. You had, when you watch some of the angles from the sideline, like low shots of the court, you can kind of see people so far back in the way that the basketball court's positioned. There's like some sections that are looking straight ahead where the court's like at a 45-degree angle to the left or right. I mean, it's such a bad setup for basketball. I really can't stand it.
Yeah, it's a shame. So back to what I said at the top of the podcast where I said, this venue, I more meant like the state of Indiana, the city of Indianapolis is a great place. Yeah, this venue, and especially it stands out more when there's other venues within the city of Indianapolis that you equate with college basketball, So it makes this even a tougher watch. And I don't like those courts where the bench is below the playing court. What other courts are like that? Isn't Minnesota was like that back in the day, wasn't it? The University of Minnesota? Yeah,
Minnesota was like that as well. I think they've kind of just made that as part of these big domes where they have to kind of restructure everything. Those have been more elevated. But I think, Minnesota, I don't remember many other, day-to-day college arenas that have that. It's just these tournament settings that have started putting those in.
Yeah, they're a rough watch.
Not great. This game was also on TBS. Did you remember this game was on TBS? I don't remember the Final Four being on TBS, and this is kind of the start, maybe a couple years after they started moving, CBS started using all of their networks, right? True TV, TBS, TNT. I don't remember this game being on TBS, and I'm shocked that they actually had it there.
Yeah, I mean, Ben, I don't want to get into a get off my lawn again with these because I always do this during college basketball podcasts, but I mean, look, the Final Four, can we put it on CBS? I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, if you want to put the 7-10 matchup from Albuquerque on Friday night on True TV, okay, that's fine. Even that's ridiculous because I don't know where to find the games.
Right.
This is when college basketball started going off the rails to me in terms of this stuff. But, yeah, this game on TBS, and I obviously noticed it right away. So, I'm sure in the moment I was confused on where the game was being played and what channel it was on. But, you're used to this stuff now, unfortunately.
what was airing on CBS that night that was more important? You know,
the answer is obviously nothing.
Saturday night CBS. What are they airing there? I mean, come on.
Yeah, who knows? NCIS rerun maybe.
Who knows, man? But it was Jim Nantz, Raftery, and then Grant Hill, the three man team.
Yeah, I mean, I think Grant Hill is fine. I just don't understand why is it the need to put a third person with Nantz and Raftery? I've never understood that, but Grant Hill is good, so I'm not saying he's not good, but good announcing team. Nantz is obviously, when you think of college basketball, he's probably the first announcer you think of, and Raftery's not far behind.
Yeah, you got to love those guys. I mean, they're the voice of the Final Four right now, and they had a really good broadcast altogether. So we'll jump into this game, Mike, and great atmosphere. Obviously, this is a very highly anticipated matchup, right? I mean, undefeated Kentucky, a Wisconsin team that had them beat the year prior, comes in, with every chance. But I still think back to this game. I don't remember the point spread for it, but I think it was probably around 6 or 7. I mean, Kentucky was still a pretty big favorite for this matchup.
Of course, yeah. So even though Wisconsin is considered a formidable foe in this game, I don't think anyone thought Wisconsin was going to be a pushover. Kentucky's still the heavy favorite.
Heavy favorite, and they're 5-point favorites is what they were. So still pretty big favorite for this matchup against the Big Ten champion. Out of the gates, Kentucky they look really good, and you kind of see how electric they are. You had a three-pointer right out first possession, splash, beautiful shot, great execution. Then you get a steal on the other end, then go the other way, a Harrison alley-oop, dunk, and it's 5-0 quickly, and you're kind of going, okay, this Kentucky team, I mean, we know what they are. This Wisconsin team better buckle down because this could get, as you said, could get off the rails quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're on lookout for that when you have any team like a Kentucky like this, where, hey, any run you're wondering, it could be the run where they go up 20.
How bad were these Wisconsin jerseys, by the way, as we kind of get into this first half?
Yeah, you couldn't really tell where the shirt ended and the shorts began. It's probably the best way to put it.
Like their shorts were like half white along the top, and then red the bottom half of the shorts. Such a bad look. And I think they're Adidas.
They could have done the opposite. Yeah, they could have done the opposite. Right up top, white down low.
I mean, I don't need the half and half. How about that? How about, let's get a better design than that. But so this game was crazy because it was a matter of runs, and Kentucky jumps off this quick 5-0 start. Then you had Wisconsin come back and go on a nice run of their own and take a nice lead in this first half. It was remarkable how much of a game of runs this was, because there's always going to be runs in every basketball game. But it seemed like Kentucky would go on a 7 or 8 point run, then Wisconsin would swing it back and go 7 or 8. So the lead would swing a little bit. I mean, some of the leads were close to 10 points in this game, but quickly the other team would answer.
Yeah, so to speak to Ben's point, you had Kentucky go up by 5 early. You had Wisconsin go up by 9 at one point, and then by halftime we're tied.
Yep.
So it literally swung like that, very evenly keel, even from that standpoint, where each team made runs, like Ben mentioned. Now, this I thought was interesting. Out of the first TV timeout, Kentucky subs in Booker, Ulis, Dakari Johnson, and Marcus Lee. This is out of the first TV timeout. And that's when I said to myself, oh, man, I forgot how many guys they had. Because it's like, this is the second unit.
Yeah, it's stupid. It really is when you're watching it. Big sequence in the half, too, where, Kentucky is gaining momentum. They pull back into a lead. They get a big steal and a dunk at, with like 10 seconds, a little under 10 seconds left on the clock in the first half. And again, when Kentucky is playing, really when they're playing anywhere, they had the majority of fans. Even though this is in Big Ten country with Wisconsin, this Kentucky fans, they travel everywhere. And you can notice, very noticeable on broadcasts when they're in an arena, because it's such a big discrepancy between when they're making runs versus the other team, how loud it gets. And you kind of have that right now, right? The Big Blue Nation's kind of rising up. They got this lead. They had this big steal and dunk. They're closing out the half on a high note. But then Bo Ryan draws up a good play where they actually get a good look and knock down a shot at the end of the half to tie it up 36-36. And I thought that was huge to kind of quiet the momentum, kind of take it back heading into the locker room. And then Bo Ryan's halftime speech, to your point, was great. I mean, and you mentioned it's a great interview. He talks about, look, it was, we had some good runs. They had some good runs, but we're right back in it. 20 minutes in, it's tied up. So 0-0 going to the second half. This is exactly where we want to be.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention our girl Tracy Wolfson.
Yeah, Tracy.
Yeah, she's great. I mean, I think she's the best in the game right now as far as sideline reporters go. But she's interviewing Bill Ryan, which makes it good. They have a good rapport back and forth. Some other quick things on the first half. We'll have some not so good things to say about the Harrison twins in the second half. Not really about them, but about Kentucky's game plan overall, I'm sure. But Andrew Harrison is keeping Kentucky in this game right now when they're going through that lull where they were down by 9. He's the only one really producing from an offensive standpoint at this time. Kentucky goes through a major lull from the field, like we mentioned. This is the only downside to playing 9 or 10 guys, is that sometimes your scorers don't get into a flow, And this started in this half, and it'll be a theme in the second half. Karl Anthony Towns, to me, seemed like he was automatic when he got the ball on the block. Automatic. Like if he got the ball where he wanted to, there was literally no stopping him this year in college. It started in this half, and it was a major, I think, big deal in the second half. Are they not getting him the ball enough for buckets? I thought that's a major storyline in this game.
Yeah, I agree. The post play was just, it was so good and so dominant, and you don't really see teams built like that now, right? They usually have one guy like that's that good. But these guys, they could have run a 3. They could have easily run those 3 guys out because they weren't. They were super athletic. It's not like you had a bunch of guys that were kind of stagnant at the post. These guys were really good, and I could have seen them play on the court together, but then you got so many guards. There's so many guys you had to get into the lineup, which we're going to talk about a little bit in the post-mortem here. But, yeah, so we go to the second half, and Wisconsin, again, off to another good start. This game quickly, a blink of an eye, Wisconsin's up 8. They score 16 points in the first, 5.5 minutes of this half, and, that's probably something that Kentucky hasn't seen all year, a run like that. It's kind of an explosive run. And you don't expect that from Wisconsin team. But when they're clicking, when they're playing well, that's how good they can be. But, immediately, though, Kentucky responds.
Yeah, so some quick hits from the beginning of this first half. Booker and Ulis start the second half, and the Harrison twins are on the bench. Kaminsky came out on fire. He had 7 points and a big block in the first 3 minutes of the second half. Wisconsin goes up 8 after going 6 of 7 from the field to start the half. And like you said, by the 7:40 mark, Kentucky is now up by 2 after a 14-4 run. So back and forth we go.
Yeah, it's crazy because Wisconsin, after that great start, they went over 6 minutes without a field goal. And Kentucky was actually able to get to a 4-point lead. And as this game went down the stretch, man, there was, again, You kind of said it. We always sound like the old man, stay off our lawn, but it feels like officiating in some of these spots, man. It's just so questionable. And we did point out last episode that, yeah, the officiating was good. We didn't notice it. Give them credit. But here you had some questionable calls down the stretch where there was one, a flagrant one, potentially. I don't remember which big man it was. Was it Lyles?
It was Lyles.
Yeah, Lyles, who basically slapped the guy in the face on a rebound. Looked pretty intentional. He had his hands up in the face. They even reviewed it. Everybody on the broadcast, Grant Hill or after, everybody thought this will be probably a flagrant one, shooting free throws. They come back after the review and say it was nothing. That was the first thing. Then you had another call on the other end that was kind of questionable on a charge. They missed a shot clock violation, which was a huge call.
That was
call.
We could talk about that. First of all, really quick on Lyles. He smacked. I think it was it Dekker?
No, I don't think it was Dekker.
I couldn't remember if it was Dekker, Ducan, or one of those guys. I don't know, one of those guys. He blatantly smacked him in the face in the middle of the court with no one else around him. It was very clear. You couldn't get any more clear. But anyway, that probably should have been a flagrant one if that's how they were calling it that season. All right. Now, in between that and the shot clock violation, which I want to talk about, you have Karl Anthony Towns getting about 4 offensive rebounds in a 1 or 2 minute span, and the Harrison twins are still the focal point of the offense during this whole stretch.
Yeah.
Can we do it even old school basketball when a big man is working hard, you reward him with the ball? Can we even do that? Even though he's the best player, probably. I know Kaminsky won Player of the Year, but let's call Towns the most top 2 or 3 talented player in college basketball this year. Mm-hmm. Can we get him the ball, especially when he's working hard like he is?
Yeah, no.
This would be a major issue to me the last 5 minutes of the game is the Harrison twins being too much of a focal point on offense. We named all the good players Kentucky has. A large set that they ran, the majority down the stretch was one of the Harrison twins in a 1-4 setup, which was mind-boggling. And they were good players. I'm not taking anything away from them, but breaking people down off the dribble completely isolated, I didn't look at it as like a huge strength of theirs. So Calipari, I don't know if he gets criticism from the Big Blue Nation for that, but he should. Now on to that blown call. We're tied at 60 with 2:30 left. I don't know how a shot clock violation can get more clear than that. And if we're opening the door to reviewing flagrant 1 fouls, how are we not reviewing that?
Right. Like it's got to be under a certain time. I mean, I don't know. That was kind of mind-boggling, and it was a pretty obvious call too. I mean, it wasn't like a bang bang. I mean, it was a clear. He has it in his hand when zeros hit that shot clock and that put back. I mean, that was a big one. And to this point with the Harrison twins, they took some bad. Like that was in my notes. Like not only were they running the offense for them, like they weren't taking very good shots. I mean, Kentucky went over 5 minutes without scoring down the stretch, from like the 6.5 minute mark to the 1 minute. It's like under a minute. They went without scoring, and mainly to your point because of the way they were kind of structuring that offense, and it was just kind of down the stretch that big shot with the shot clock. That was kind of the turning point to me. From that point forward, Wisconsin took the lead and never looked back. And I was kind of disappointed too the way Kentucky closed it out. They were out of sorts. They didn't run any. Their offense looked pretty bad trying to get a final shot. You would think with that much talent they could get buckets when they needed to, but they couldn't in this game.
Yeah, and they just seemed all out of sorts after that shot clock violation. And after I'm still blown away by how they ran their offense the last 5 minutes. Again, not that the Harrison twins were not good players, but for them to be the main focal point on the stretch is ridiculous. And Dekker with that 3-pointer to give them the lead with 1:40 left was a huge shot. Then Dekker draws a charge on the other end with 1:25 left. But in Kentucky's defense again, though, the next possession for Wisconsin, that was another bad call on Harrison on the Dekker drive when he blocked his shot.
Yeah.
It's another bad call, right? So now after all this, Dekker hit 1 of 2 of those free throws, and Wisconsin's up 4.
And that was pretty much it. I mean, Kentucky had opportunities, but they never really threatened. No good shots. They even turned it over towards the end of the game. I mean, it was kind of the game petered out. But the officiating did have an impact in this one. I mean, I'm not going to blame that on the total on this loss for Kentucky because I think you still scratch your head with the way they went offensively with the final 5.5, 6 minutes of this game. Like they just thought they had it in control and we're just going to slow this thing down and milk away the clock. But they were all out of sorts. And this experienced Wisconsin team, I think the experience really kind of showed through in this game late as Wisconsin became that team that took over. And Kentucky didn't. But the final score is 71-64, so it ended up being a 7-point win for Wisconsin, despite the fact that it was really back and forth throughout. And I think Dekker really kind of came through at the end, was huge. Koenig hit a bunch of free throws down the stretch as well for them. But this was a huge upset at the time, and this was the lone loss in Kentucky's season. And this too, the win in this game would have given Kentucky the most wins in a season in NCAA history. In this game, they had tied it going into this, and this loss really didn't give them the chance to be that one of the greatest teams of all time, at least by record. So, huge upset, and but one of the great games. This is also too my kind of a battle of like now kind of the way basketball is being played, where you got a team that's full of guys with experience for the most part, pretty good experience, versus a team of freshmen and sophomores. That's kind of where we are in basketball.
Yeah. So real quick, the Kentucky's this loss largely self-inflicted with the way they ran their offense down the stretch, but the refs definitely helped a little bit. I mean, no doubt about it. But give credit to Wisconsin; they rose to the occasion, made big plays, and this is where when I think of this era of college basketball, like you just mentioned, I would probably say the last maybe since Calipari's been in Kentucky. Because you've seen other big name coaches go more towards this one and done model. This is the argument in college basketball, I think, for this generation. The veteran teams versus the one-and-dones. And how good is it for the sport? Does it matter? Is the product just as good? Is it not as good? I think you can get into a very good debate about that.
I go back to an interview I saw with Calipari on Dan Patrick after this game. And he just about admitted to kind of mishandling the roster this year. And he said basically, look, we have a bunch of good players, and we have to get them time. And he basically said even to the fact that it was not good for our team, and it kind of hurt our team, we had to get all these guys time. And again, it goes back to the fact that they had this bench that was so deep that, to the detriment of what we're trying to accomplish, we're trying to get guys in just to get them playing time. And I think he even thought, I would have preferred to have a better rotation in those games, but I had to get guys time. And I wonder, I know Kentucky fans are happy with Calipari and what he's been able to do. Now, I say this after they had one of their worst seasons of all time, at least in a long time, and didn't make the tournament. But are they happy with the outcome that they get, right? To where you have all the talent in the world every single year, but look at the results, right? Where you have one national championship. And you think about that one national championship, you had one of the greatest college players of all time, Anthony Davis, right? So you had to have the best possible team to get there. So I kind of wonder, where's that balance? Are you happy with that, being in the probably in the Sweet 16 every year, but maybe winning one every 10 years? Is that a good trade-off?
I think this could be a completely wrong read on Kentucky fans, but from what I gather, Kentucky fans is they like being in the center of sort of the college basketball universe, and Calipari gets them that, right? They're always going to be a big story as long as he's there. But you probably get the other side of Kentucky fans that, just look at it kind of like, I'm trying to think of a football program that's kind of comparable, but maybe out like Alabama.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Like where they just care about, do we win the championship or do we not?
Right.
Is it that cut and dry every year? For those fans, obviously, I don't think they're going to be okay with any coach. But I think, Kentucky will always be relevant when Calipari's there, and they'll always have good teams. And I always look at it from this perspective. If you get rid of Calipari, who's coming in that's going to be better than him?
Yeah.
Sure, it sounds good. Hey, let's get these guys that develop and they're program guys, and we get a Kaminsky and we get a Dekker, and they grow with us and all that. That's fine, but are you willing to deal with the one or two bad seasons that are inevitable if you run a model that way? Or do you want these teams that come into your life like a comet, like this team or the Anthony Davis team? They even had another team that went 35-3. You know what I mean? Do you want those teams? Is that a good trade-off for you? And that's really what it comes down to.
I don't know. I mean, I just feel like you could limit the roster. I mean, I know you want to try to hoard talent, but it just seems like at some point, you have too much, right? You cannot manage the roster, and if you can't manage the roster, then that's not a success to me. I mean, this is a great year, but there's no reason why you're having to play guys just to play guys, right? I feel like that's where the problem is when you're having to get these guys minutes just to keep them happy because they're that good, right? Let them go somewhere else and play. You almost can get to any kid you want. Build the team to where you have, you can build an 8 or 9 man rotation. I mean, I know it changes every year and they're cycling guys through, but it just seems like this formula is great for wins, but it's not great for championships. And we're even kind of seeing it too with Duke and UNC a little bit now. Like those teams are now kind of recruiting the same way, where traditionally they would be happy with guys to be in the program 3 years, and they kind of say, we don't need the one and dones. Now they've gone that way, and it doesn't seem like there's as much success that route.
Yeah, you know where it especially looks, the roster looks kind of crowded is when you have a year like this where you had good players like Dakari Johnson, Marcus Lee, Poitras even, very good players that are maybe not good enough to leave and they stay, and then you recruit on top of those players.
Yeah.
That's where you end up with teams like this. But look, I mean, to go 38-1, I don't think this particular season you can argue with it. I just think this particular game came down to a couple of possessions late,
Well, I mean, my argument would be, though, that if Calipari can manage that game like he wanted to and not keep people happy, they probably win. And they probably win. Of course.
If they play 8 guys and feed Towns a steady dose of Towns and kick it out to those shooters, I personally don't think this game is even close.
Right. I mean, that's the point. Yeah. It's like he's
you're right. You're right on
that.
I
don't know. Yeah. It's a great problem to have if you're a Kentucky fan. There's no question. But to me, I just wonder, how long they're willing to tolerate it. Not getting. Now they haven't been back to the Final Four since this year, Mike. Too, by the way. So now you're talking 6 years removed from this, and they're not back there. I hate to say his seat's not getting hot, but is there a chance that he says, "Let me go give the NBA another chance" or something like that?
How old is he? I would think at first I would go to how old is he right now? He may not want to. He may be. I don't know. How many NBA jobs are better than being the coach of Kentucky?
Well, he's got him rolling. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's 62. So.
Oh wow, I thought he was older than that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I go back to that. How many NBA jobs are going to is an NBA team going to be willing to pay him what they're going to need to pay to get him? First of all.
Yeah.
That's the biggest question. I don't know. I err on the side of you got this. You still got this thing humming here in Kentucky. I wouldn't test the waters if I was him.
Understood. Well, this Wisconsin team, Bo Ryan, as I mentioned, this will be his final full year. He announced he planned to retire in the offseason, would actually coach for 12 games before just abruptly saying, okay, I'm done. That 2015-2016 year. But he had an incredible year with Wisconsin, and this season was great. But this Wisconsin team would go on to the championship, Mike, and can't fail to mention that championship game was a great one, Duke and Wisconsin. Duke will pull it out. Though 68-63, so Wisconsin would fall just short of that. You had Justice Winslow, Tyus Jones, really good Duke team, but
Okafor, right? Jahlil Okafor,
maybe, yeah, possibly. I don't remember everybody on that lineup, but it was a good team. And this Wisconsin team just fell short. So a great season overall, but they had Grayson Allen on that team too.
Yeah. With that said, this game completely overshadowed that game.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So if you're looking at it from a perspective, if someone's going to remember one game from the 2015 tournament, they're going to remember this game because, Kentucky was undefeated.
Yep. Any outdated from this game? It's not very old.
I didn't see anything. Outdated. Did you?
No, just TBS broadcasting a Final Four game. Let's make that outdated, please.
With an undefeated team playing, too.
No, right.
It would have been a huge – Kentucky was getting huge ratings this year. I mean, think about the Duke team with Zion Williamson,
Yeah,
that's
right.
the kind of attention we're talking about.
Yeah, could
here.
you imagine ESPN throwing that on ESPNU or ACC
Network?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Give me a break. All right, let's close it out, Mike. That was a good show, good game, great game to go back and watch. We're going to put it up on our website, distantreplaypodcast.com, if you want to watch it yourself. But also subscribe on YouTube. Follow us, whatever podcasting app that you choose to use. And we're also on Twitter and Instagram as well. Connect with us anywhere. If you have any recommendations for games or true crime episodes, send them over to us. We're doing that. We're also finishing up our documentary review of Last Chance as well. So a lot of content still to come. We appreciate all the support.
As always, I mean, this is a great one to go back and watch. We're probably going to be moving on from college basketball next week, so stay tuned. Until next time.